Good morning, Vikings fans. This is Morning Joe's. I'm your host, Joe Johnson, owner of PurplePTSD.com and VikingsTerritory.com, as well as the Purple Territory Radio Network and our brand new Periscope channel. Check it out. This is what all the teens are doing. I am here with Joe Oberly, hence the name Morning Joe's.
Good morning. There's no you in morning, but there's definitely an us, right?
Yeah. Merry Christmas, too, man.
Merry Christmas to you.
Joe is the editor of PurplePTSD.com and VikingsTerritory.com, which is a super important role considering we added some new writers this week. So stay tuned to Purple PTSD because we're going to have a ton of coverage this week and for the off season. But Joe also writes for thesportspost.com. What a game.
Yeah, it was a good game, a game they needed. It didn't start out looking like that one, but it certainly didn't look like the one we saw the previous week. They scored on the first three drives, touchdowns, and then this week they go over 3 and outs for 4 straight drives. So it was a stark change in approach for the Kevin Stefanski regime. But the defense played lights out again, and the offense made some adjustments. Got a nice cattle prod there right before the half that really launched them out in the second half. Things loosened up, and they put away a team that they clearly should have. I was saying it on the chat, and I said, don't let this team hang around. You give them confidence. You let them think, hey, we can end our season on a good note here by taking down the Vikings. Blah 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 blah. And they were feeling it for a while, but the defense didn't allow them to score touchdowns and then shut them out in the second half, and the offense got going and buried him. It was nice.
Yeah, definitely. There was for people that don't know, we do a live chat during the game, and like you seemingly are everywhere, you were kind of the voice of reason and speaking of cattle prods, the calming effect on some of the apocalyptic language, and I've used that exact term about the live chat multiple times this season. But in the first half, especially when it was 9-0, there were people yet again talking about, well, heads are going to roll, and who gets fired, and whose fault is this? And
it was amazing, Joe.
Yeah, your thing was, it's the first half, it's 9-0, and heads are rolling, or you said, or people are getting fired. Calm down,
Joe. So I actually posted that when it was 3-0.
Oh no, that's even worse.
True, it was crazy. And then they scored another. It was right before they were about to get their second field goal. I said, I think the Vikings can come back from 6 points down here. It's like, wow. I was amazed. At that.
It is telling when I am also telling people to calm down. It's crazy at that point. But what do you attribute the slow start to? Do you think it was just coming down from the win they had the week before? Do you think it was a division game on the road, or they were sleepy? What was it? What wasn't working more specifically, I guess?
A lot of those things, and then you've got Stefanski put a game on tape. I don't know if that helps, so maybe they were expecting some things from the Vikings. I did hear Zimmer say that they threw out some stuff that they weren't quite ready for, so they had to make some adjustments. And it was funny, my son was home, and we were watching the game together, and he's sitting there looking at his phone in the first half, and I'm going, this is not exactly what we hoped for. And he says, oh yeah, he goes, I don't get too worked up until the second half, because he's seen how games all of a sudden really change in the second half. Teams get tired, teams get desperate, teams get on, they get going, or they lose. And I got to give him props because, now granted, watching, your phone instead of the game is not exactly the greatest thing, but he was right that the Vikings did. We all jumped up off our seat for the Hail Rudy, and a huge change of momentum. But the slow start, it's hard to say. I don't know. The Lions are not. For me, it all breaks down to the teams are all pretty close in the NFL. I've said this many times. I'll probably say it again. And they were ready to play. They were at home, like you said, a division game. They know a lot about each other, and they're going to try to win. And sooner or later, when teams make their adjustments and see how the other team is game planned against them, they're going to say, okay, this will work against that. Let's throw this at them, and things start working. I also put up in the chat, like, sarcastically, oh my God, Stefanski's a genius, a Hail Mary.
Yeah.
What a what in fact anybody, I would have made that call, or so would you had you been the OC. But
I do want to applaud them being aggressive before the first before halftime.
Absolutely.
There's been glaring times in the history of this team where they wouldn't have done that. I'm also happy that the refs gave him those 2 seconds, considering Rudy made the boneheaded play right before he made arguably the best play of his career.
So let me ask, how did that happen? I had my, I was, working on my post game. I collect notes and stuff during the game, and all of a sudden I saw Rudy go out of bounds and that whole thing, and I saw the clock run out. Next thing you know, I jumped up and went to the bathroom, and I hear that something's going on. I come back out. How did they get 2 seconds back? What happened there?
I don't see. That's the one question I can't answer because I was actually up at the time. From what I saw and gathered from what people were saying, he basically he let a lot of time come off the clock because he was fighting for yardage that didn't matter, and so I think they initially didn't give him. Yes.
Okay.
And so it was weird because he wouldn't go down, and it was as if he thought it was like 4th and short, and he needed these yards that didn't matter.
Right.
So it's just, he took a ton of time off the clock in doing it.
What a gift! What a gift!
God, there's so much there though, because you look at Stefanski, and it became a cliche really quickly. And you mentioned this in the chat as well. I do want to mention people should definitely, for the Bears game, come to the chat because we had the best turnout we've had yesterday. It was really fun. But you had mentioned something that we talked about on the show last week, which was this, like they emailed everyone and said, make sure you bring up the fact that Stefanski is calm when the media talks to you. Because everybody seemed to be hammering that point home. And I do think that
to a slight extent.
Whether or not it's whether or not it was meant as a slight to DiFilippo, like we talked about last week, doesn't really matter in this context because I think the biggest difference between Stefanski and DiFilippo, especially after what you heard coming out this week, which is just what we'd already heard and kind of knew, but that Zimmer had privately sat DiFilippo down and said you have to run the ball multiple times. The report was, and the run game was not working at all early in the game. But the fact that they stuck with it was a testament to maybe that calm, that lack of panic, and him saying, you know what, we're going to wear this team down, and it's going to work because we have a very, very elite running back, a dangerous weapon in Dalvin Cook. We have a great guy in Latavius Murray, who I thought was odd. Zimmer, I was listening to his pregame stuff on KFan as I drove to get some energy drinks before the game, and they asked, well, how do you determine when you're going to use Latavius? And he said, it depends, but basically every third series we throw him in there. And I thought it was a little more strategic than that, but I guess not. But, to all of their credit, it ended up working. And with the playoffs looming, you need a run game. Just not trying to bail out Cousins at all. But when you have a guy who maybe is a very high-end systems guy, as Mike, our new writer, Mike Okeson said yesterday in the Rapid Reaction Roundtable, if he throws 60 times, there's going to be a pick in there. That's just how the game works. So I really liked that they didn't bail on what they were doing and go to some different plan. And I think that was a testament to Stefanski.
Yeah, it came out in the second half, and suddenly the holes start opening up. They were non-existent in the first half, and they didn't, like you said, they did not give up on it. They tried to reestablish it with the run after those 2 quick touchdowns that gave them some lead. They gave them the lead, gave them some confidence. It was nice. I wanted to say, I brought up the whole thing about, the calm. Like I said, I heard like 6 different players / coaches say this about him. And to me, it was either, Vikings talking points that they gave at some meeting. Everybody says Stefanski's calm. It was so, and I was waiting for someone to say, yeah, we referred to as John DeFilippo as John D. Flip Out.
Man,
that's not true. But I never saw him on that crease. But so I really think it's happened so much. Maybe it is like you said. Maybe it is a slight at him. I didn't take him at that way as first, but I hope Zimmer's not that petty and he wants to do something like that. But there does seem to have been a little bit of not bad blood, but they did not see things the same way. Obviously, he let go as a result. And I applaud him for making a decision to help the team win. But I think in my heart of hearts, he's not that callous of a guy that will just cut somebody loose over a petty disagreement. I really don't think that because
it depends.
North turned left, and they let him go. So I don't know. I guess that's me being a Zimmer bobo. That I hope that's not the case.
I feel like it depends on how egregious you think him. Okay, there's a couple things here. So whoever quote unquote leaked that story to ESPN about the meetings and him sitting him down, that seemed to me to be the Vikings wanting to either build or create that narrative that DeFilippo was let go because he wasn't listening. The article that I read on ESPN basically said that it feels like maybe DeFilippo was ignoring Zimmer because he felt like, I'm going to be a head coach anyway, why would I listen to you? Which is a reach, but it does. The article also said, and I completely agree with this, that it is very, very bad for DeFilippo's job prospects as a coordinator for people to know that he basically was being insubordinate and not listening to what the head coach was saying because he thought he knew better, and it gets worse and worse for him as the Vikings continue to have success at things that he wasn't doing. And so he's got to just be, it's got to be the worst Christmas ever for him. But that's how I took it.
If he was saying it in the media, which he ultimately finally did a couple weeks in a row, I mean, you and I scratched our heads. At least, I remember thinking, how does this not happen? How does he not, just say, John, run the damn ball, and that's the end of it. But so something had to be going on for him to get to the point that he brought it out in the media. But I don't know.
He's so done stuff like that before, I guess, but more with players than anything else.
Yes, correct. Yeah, maybe he has. Maybe I got to take off my purple blinders. But,
and this will tie in a little bit to the Monday's tale of the tape. And I want to get into the NFC Playoff picture before we do that. But the other thing about Stefanski that I wanted to highlight was Kyle Rudolph, over 120 yards. Obviously, he had that amazing Hail Mary catch, which helped 2 touchdowns. He was on his longest touchdown drought of his career. I think it was like 11 games. And,
correct.
You look at earlier in the season when they were throwing the ball a million times and they kept feeding the ball to Treadwell, and 50% of the time he'd drop it, not 50, but probably 20%. And we talked a lot about why does he keep getting opportunities. This is because they don't have anyone to do what he's doing. Eldrick Robinson might not be the right size for it. And so it's just, you said this on the Rapid Reaction Roundtable, to have this aspect of, well, there's two aspects of the running game too, but to have Kyle Rudolph emerging at this point of the season, going into the playoffs, assuming they make it, is a huge wrinkle that teams maybe didn't have to, plan for or worry about completely a couple weeks ago. And now you have a guy who is arguably a top 5 tight end when he's getting the ball, touchdown machine for sure. And you're adding that to this offense as opposed to the Treadwell thing, bringing him in as the third option. It's super exciting.
He was the leading touchdown maker on the Vikings. Wasn't that last year, 8 touchdowns, or was that 2 years ago?
Well, he had like 12 touchdowns 2 years ago, I think. So, or at least 2 or 3 within the last 2 or 3 years. So that should help their red zone numbers. That should scare opposing teams. It's great to see.
It's something else they have to game plan for. You can't sell out on Thielen and Diggs and say, okay, we'll watch Aldrick Robinson over the top when he's in the game, and then sell out on those guys. You've got to you got to get a slot guy on Rudy that can cover him because he's a big dude and he's a basketball player. And he knows how to box out, as he showed in the end zone there.
Yeah.
Like I said in my game wrap, that he's not Gronk, but man, it was nice to see that. About halfway through the game, I started cluing in on him, thinking, okay, got to talk about Rudy this time, and then they just kept feeding him, and I go, my goodness, what a game this guy's having. So it was something we hadn't seen this season. There were a couple games. There was even a game where DeFilippo said in his weekly thing that we got to get the ball to Rudolph more. He's playmaker, blah blah blah. And I think I recall that game. They threw him a couple passes early, and then it went away. So if this is an aspect of Stefanski's offense, that he is going to find the holes and find where to attack a defense and then exploit it. God, all for him. That's awesome, and not just say, I got 2 really good receivers out here, let's feed them the ball. So I'm really liking it. Last week it was Dalvin Cook. This week it's Rudy. Hopefully coming up on Sunday we can get a little more Diggs and Thielen back in there, or whatever. It doesn't matter. It's exciting to see, and certainly tough for a game planner to plan against. So
whose heads are going to roll? Let's talk about the NFC Playoff picture really quickly. So the Vikings won, obviously, but they didn't get a whole lot of luck.
They had plenty coming in, but yes, not they didn't get the wins they wanted yesterday.
No, the Seahawks won in dominant fashion. That was a very entertaining game. Speaking of entertaining, holy crap, that Eagles-Texans game was amazing. This is such a bad take, and it's not based in reality. I understand that, but I just want to tell you how my brain is interpreting what's going on. So, yeah, obviously it would have been nice if the Seahawks lost, the Vikings could have slid up to the 5th seed. But I just have this feeling that there is no way that the Eagles won't make the playoffs because of just and I'm not pulling a writer who will not be named saying the refs or the league wants it this way. I just feel like the Cosmos, and I'm not going to write this or say this literally, but this is the feeling I have. I just want to keep saying that. With the full story again and the December magic and the way that game ended, I just have this feeling that they're going to make the playoffs, and maybe it's just me being a pessimist about the Vikings because they've let me down so many times, but this Foles thing is no joke, and speaking of teams no one wants to face in the playoffs, as we said about the Vikings a lot the last week or two, they're looking a little scary, and I don't know.
Well, there's another way to look at it, Joe, and it dawned on me this morning. All the reasons. I've been focused in on the Bears because there's so much going on there between the Vikings and the Bears, but doesn't the fact that the Vikings could end the Eagles' season, shouldn't that add a little more incentive to the Vikings this weekend?
Yes.
Not only can the Vikings get themselves in, which is their play, but which should be their main focus, but in the back of their head, you say, hey, we win, the Eagles are done, and we did that. It's a nice little payback for last year. So,
and they would knock the Bears out of potentially getting the second seed by and some home field advantage, unless they face the Saints, obviously. Depending on what happens with the Rams next week, if I'm right.
I think that's a very juicy narrative to think about. I mean, yes, you look at that last night, and Foles is doing it again, and their stats out about him this morning that he's having this, he's having the dream season part 2 for some strange reason. I got it. Some guy was freaking out why he wasn't freaking out. I think it was Mike Freeman was saying, why did they ever trade Foles for Bradshaw in the first place? Not Bradshaw, Bradford. And, he quoted some statistics, and, I don't know. This guy's got some magic in his hands, but, I don't know. Given that he took him to the playoffs last year and won the Super Bowl as the MVP, I think he's had his 15 minutes, and I think that's another point where the Vikings are going to go take care of business and
I certainly hope so. Obviously I want that to happen. I wonder, and we covered this last week, and we don't need to really get into it too much. I just want to reaffirm your answer. But do you think they pay him that $20 million next year and keep him based on Wentz's injury history? Foles. Or do you think he ends up going somewhere? That's what I read this morning.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Well, I can't answer that for them. I don't know. I think if they go to the playoffs and win and win another Super Bowl and he's the reason, yeah, absolutely. Because you got a ACL tear one season, a broken back in the next season. So I don't know. Someone was comparing their stats and they're saying that Foles is in his limited run has been better than Wentz in certain cases, and you can make that case for any two quarterbacks, but.
Yeah.
If he has,
he's more dangerous for sure.
How do you not, Joe? How do you not do it if he does it again? How do you not pay him?
Yeah. It's a good handcuff. You don't want him to go somewhere else. I know Jacksonville would love to have him. He seems to just have this connection, especially with like Nelson Aguilar. They keep getting these huge touchdowns. I think it was the longest touchdown since 2010. So yeah, it's like you said, it's huge incentive for the Vikings just based on what happened last season. They already beat them this year. Ending their season would just be a sweet, payback for everybody involved. So hopefully that happens.
It's kind of frustrating that they beat them earlier this year and they can't even use the tiebreaker. That kind of stinks.
I know. That's what I was kind of hoping. I will say that. Yeah, but this is looking back at the season. This is why you need to beat teams like the Bills, and this is why you need a kicker who can beat the Packers when he's given 15 opportunities, and we won't have to be so nervous about Sunday. I am already peak me. I'm like a hummingbird right now. I could levitate off the ground. But let's get into the Tuesday's Tales of the Tape, Monday style.
I'm going to need a couple seconds here after that last image, so you as a hummingbird. Okay, deep breath. The first two tales are related to cousins, and I'm going to talk first about the Hail Rudy, which I like that name. I was trying to come up with something. The first half Mary, I called it, but I heard Hail Rudy, and that sounded better, so I'm going with this. The Hail Rudy was a 44-yard touchdown, and me and my son were trying to figure out how far Cousins threw. We estimated about 55 to 60 in the air. Wow. And afterwards, he was talking to the media, and he was describing it, and he said he had about a 6-yard window to hit it in the end zone. He says, I got to get it about 2 yards deep into the end zone, and I don't want to go further than 8 yards because then you're by the back line. And it was kind of interesting. He's so just plaintively just breaking this thing down, and I kind of loved it. And so it was a great catch because we saw two guys took Thielen out and kind of pushed him to the back of the end zone and kind of cleared out a little space for Rudolph, who was the tallest player in the field,
and apparently the only one jumping.
Yes, and he jumped up, grabbed it, and it was actually an easy, almost uncontested Hail Mary, which was kind of nice. A great catch, but it was even a better throw. After hearing Cousins describe that, I said, God dang, that is, he sprinted out of the pocket, and to me it dawned on me like, here's a guy that who doesn't like to go out of the pocket and throw on the run. And he was saying how he goes, I knew I had to give him time to get down there. You don't want to throw it short, of the end zone because he might not get it. He says, so you got to give him time. So he sprinted out. He stepped up in the pocket like a pro, went to the right a little bit, got in plenty of room to heave it, with his body going into it. And it was like he'd been doing it all his life. And, it surprised the heck out of me. It's like, God, come on, let's see a little bit more of this outside the pocket.
How many times this season have we talked about him getting out of the pocket?
Every week.
Yes, and that he isn't comfortable doing it, but that he seems to have so much success when he's doing it. I think he's got double-digit touchdowns. I know he has one interception. But especially for a guy that seemingly doesn't have that internal clock, that doesn't feel the pressure coming, getting him out of the pocket, it just makes so much sense. And in regards
the way
to
he knew he had to do it, Joe. He knew this is what I had to do. And this was, predetermined. I mean, I can't think of the word. He was trying to do this. And he looked reasonably comfortable throwing that pass.
Yeah, it to me, I was watching it. I always watch the games with my dad, and he was upstairs watching the game, and he's a little bit behind me because he works nights, so he missed like the first 10 minutes and was catching up. And I felt like I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like, did that really just happen? Where's the flag? That can't be real. I mean, why didn't anybody else jump? I would argue that whoever was defending Rudy was a little handsy. He wrapped him up before he jumped pretty good. I would argue maybe that they should have thrown a flag. I know they just want them to play, especially in that situation, giving them a first and goal from the one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the Super Bowl last year, what's that white wide receiver for the Patriots? Was it Edelman? He got just completely leveled. He was the underneath guy on the Hail Mary, so he was still running to the end zone, and he just got basically tackled, clotheslined, and they didn't flag that. This wasn't as egregious, but I probably would have complained about it had it not worked. But God, you can't put enough emphasis on how important that play was.
Yeah, I walked back into the room seeing that they had 2 seconds left, and I thought it was kind of silly to do so. And then all of a sudden, this play starts developing, and when he threw the ball, and all of a sudden you saw Rudolph down there, I just yelled out, "Hey, this has got a chance!" Because you saw Rudolph and those other guys that come up about 2/3 of up, as tall as he is, and then it's like you never usually think it's got a chance, but it looked so clear for him to be able to do something there.
Yeah.
And they did, and we high-fived. It was a great moment.
Oh.
And like we all said on the chat, it completely changed the momentum. Things all went from there. So.
I do my halftime smoke break Periscope show, and I had 2 pages of notes, and I literally could not put a thought together. I just kept saying, wow, I cannot believe that happened. Wow. And
it was fun.
Since we're on the topic of Cousins, he quietly had a great game. He had 3 touchdowns, 250 some yards, I think.
Joe, that's my next tale.
Okay.
Well, let me do it first. Cousins' stat line was 21 of 28 for 253 yards, 3 touchdown passes, no picks, and a rating of 137.9. He's put 2 decent games together under Stefanski. Yeah. Discuss amongst yourself. All right, go off on your Kirk Cousins. I love you so much.
Yep. I think we should move in together. Oh God, it's his season as a whole. These last 2 games is a very good microcosm of it. He had 112.2 rating, 215 yards, 2 touchdowns and a pick against the Dolphins. It's just the win or the how of some of these turnovers. He's had 3 pick sixes. He had those devastating fumbles in the Vikings territory against the Bills. But you look at his stats right now, he is 4,100 yards, 29 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, and a 100.9 rating on the season. He's going to end the season with a 3-to-1 touchdown ratio. He's, in the top 10 or the top 5 for the most attempts for a Vikings quarterback. Another volume-based stat. So there's volume there, but I feel like, and I've openly said that, Cousins is not playing up to expectations 2 weeks ago. That I wasn't, that I wasn't happy with it. That I'm willing to admit that, and I understand how Vikings fans their psyche works, and I also understand the expectations coming into this season tied with the money that they gave him. But I do feel like, not that he's gotten a raw deal, but he started the season on fire. You look at the Packers game, both Packers games. You look at
man's making $84 million. He didn't get a raw deal. I don't care what you say.
No, I'm just saying that these people that are saying that he needs to take a salary cut or he needs to get cut, not understanding they'd have to pay him anyway. That's how guaranteed money works. Any other quarterback in Vikings history, there's that statistic. The Vikings haven't had a quarterback start 16 games in a row, 2 seasons in a row, since 1978. And they've always been looking for this franchise quarterback who isn't, in his late 30s. And for a guy who started out that well, obviously had some struggles, but you could tie that to the DiFilippo situation, who is playing a lot better. I think people need to chill on this anti-Cousins stuff just a little bit. It's
Yeah, you're biased, so I'm only you have to chill on your Cousins level a little bit too. I think it's somewhere more in the middle because it.
Well, I'm not saying he's amazing or anything. I just don't think he's like this gigantic bust everyone's making him out to be.
He's not. He's absolutely not. And to cut him would be silly and foolish, and you just explained why. But and I don't know how they do this with someone who's got a fully guaranteed contract. But maybe you have to extend him. But I really do think they got to come knocking on his door if they need money to sign Barr and Trey Waynes and Richardson next year, because this defense is the thing that's they're the stars of the season. No matter what you say about Cousins, had a great year, no question about it. He's improved the offense, but the stars, once again, the defense. They're now up to a top 5 defense in the league again, in terms of, which we'll get into the next thing. But my point is, you have to come and talk to him. You have to come and figure out how to get some cap space out of his contract, I think, eventually. And I don't know if they will do it. Rob Brzezinski is the master, as we all know, but this is I used to work for the Timberwolves, and we got so frustrated because they gave Kevin Garnett all this money, this record contract, and then it hamstrung him to put anybody else around him. And if that's the case with Cousins' contract, that's a problem. And so I don't say cut him, but I do say somehow you got to, and renegotiate. And I think Kirk is the kind of guy that would do that. He wants to win.
That was my question.
I don't think he's a selfish guy. So I can see that happening, and I have no problem with him doing that. I wouldn't think he would budge, and I think his family's going to be okay with the salary he's getting paid.
Does he still drive like a minivan or something? Did I hear? I heard he drove like some old beat up minivan. I will
beat
say,
up. I doubt it.
When you don't need to. I will say that obviously winning to him is more important than money, at least a little bit, because he otherwise would have went to the Jets. You're looking at, what, $84 million versus $90 million. What's the difference, really? But the fact that he did that, I think, at least shows that it's impossible. But yeah, I wonder how fans would react if they perhaps, change his contract to a 5-year deal or something like that. I'm sure there'd be some outrage there, but
of course there would. Of course there would. No.
But there always is.
As I was saying earlier, the defense is the star of the season. They've just been impressing the heck out of me. I thought they had lost their way earlier this season, and they have been slowly climbing. I looked before the show, and they're back up. They're back up to the defense allowed 223 total yards on the game yesterday and only 9 points. They're back up to 4th in the league in terms of yards allowed, and the defense is back, and that's going to be a huge key next week. So it's they figured it out for whatever it was, and they played some tough teams in there, and yet the defense has just basically, ever since, was it the Rams game where they really got they really got a lot of points scored against them. Since then, they have become the defense they were last year, and they just had to take a while to to overcome. They're still about middle of the road in points given up, but that's not as big a deal. Some of those points are not on them. I mean, last week they gave up. They gave up the one play of the touchdown and the field goal, the pick six,
one play
on Cousins, and this week, 3 touchdowns when the offense had given them very poor field position, and they still held, keeping these guys field goals, one of the best field goal kickers in the league. So I'm very bullish on this defense. I'm very bullish on this defense, and I'm excited. I really want to see them in the playoffs because I think they are the kind of team that can do some damage once you get there. If they win, they would go to Chicago, and that's a little bit different animal. But I'm really excited, and I want to make sure that if they have to come talking to Cousins to keep the defense intact, I know we talked about this yesterday. I want all 3 of them, and I really think they got to do it. So.
You look at yesterday, for example. The game very well could have been the flip of the Dolphins game. 3, the Lions were getting into Vikings territory. The field position was garbage. They had a couple times early in the game where the Vikings had some negative plays to get the Lions out of field goal range. But could have ended up being 21-0 the other way, and they held them, and that really was a huge, probably the most important part of the game, was holding them to 9 points. The thing about the defense that is astounding is Sean Borman tweeted something like this last night. Against elite quarterbacks, Russell Wilson, 72 yards passing. You have Drew Brees, 125 yards passing. You have there's 2 other really, I think, Tannehill's not elite, but he had very low yards. They've completely stifled Stafford, a guy who's had their number in his career, especially since Zimmer arrived. And it's in this league, with the way the rules work and the points that are getting put up by some of these teams, it is astounding how well that they've been playing. They, like you said, they were struggling earlier in the season, and they shored that up. They, simplified things, let their playmakers make plays. And outside of the one thing, and this applies to both sides of the ball, the penalties yesterday were something they need to clean up. That gave the Lions some life early on too. There was some,
absolutely,
3rd and 18s and stuff like that.
They kept extending drives for them with really stupid penalties. I was getting pretty frustrated, but it's the one thing that concerns me. I'm not gonna say scared because I'm not afraid of the Bears this week. Is this quarterback that they have can run like nobody's business, and he's starting to figure it out with him a little bit. I mean, I think coming in here, he's going to have a little bit tougher way to go against this team in their home, on the road. But that's always been their Achilles heel a little bit, running quarterbacks that can get out. So hopefully they're prepared to rein him in, because yes, you make a good point of all the string of really good quarterbacks they've shut down. Even Brady, he didn't do that well against him either. So I don't know what it is, but. I wanted to talk about Rudy again because we haven't had that much of a chance this season. His line was 9 catches for 122 yards and 2 touchdowns. Wow. His first 100-yard game of his career. How about that?
Wow.
And he's
good for him.
8 years. Nice to have it on tape for the Bears, as we had said earlier. He'll be a key on Sunday. It's the rap on Rudy the first 3 or 4 years of his career has been his injuries. Well, to be honest, in the last 4 years, he's pretty much shored that up. Now, I think that's what we gave up in that regard. He's just not as aggressive and blowing people over as he could be. He gets the ball, and he gets the ball, and someone can knock him over with a tackle. He just seems to crumble easier than he should. Now, maybe that's out of staying on the field. Maybe he's being smarter and he's not trying to do anything. The other thing, I've always early in his career. I remember talking with somebody about this. It's because these guys are bigger than most of the guys out there, and their knees are right there. They're going to get shots. I mean, look at Gronkowski. Here
Yes.
I compare him. He's not Gronkowski because Gronk is just a devil may care. He grabs the ball and he goes and and people have drilled him many times from the side. And when you try to tackle that guy, you're going to end up hitting their knees because that's about where you come up to them when you
and
you
it's
go
the
after
only
them.
way to really take them down. You can't
Right.
you can't like check them and expect them to fall over. You're completely right, and that was going to be my take. Just to expand on it a little bit, I do think that it's a conscious decision, obviously, by Rudolph. The boneheaded play before halftime was kind of the antithesis of what he's done. I mean, there's been a bunch of different examples of him, getting a pass out in the flat, and he's going up against a 5'8", 5'9" DB. And as opposed to trying to bowl him over, he'll take a lesser hit and go out of bounds, for example. I was watching the game with one of our writers who called him a word I won't repeat on air, but it rhymes with pushy.
Got it.
And he, the trade-off is: would you rather that he picks up that touchdown, but then is out for 4 weeks? You got to take take that into consideration. And you're right. So I don't knock him for it because that's just the reality, and he's doing the best he can with the cards he's being dealt. And as we've said, he is a very dangerous weapon, especially in the red zone. And the fact that he'll be healthy should they make the playoffs is super important.
Yes.
Yeah. So let's see.
I guess I got one more tale.
Sure.
I'm sorry, I was just correcting some interference here. I should say the tale of the tape is it's not even a tale of this game, but it's 27-6. If the Vikings win, this number is forgotten in time. If they lose, it becomes like 41 donuts. The loss to the Bills. It was the worst loss of the season. If they lose this Sunday, that's the one that's going to come back to haunt them and us and everybody. And if they win, we don't ever really think about it again. So
yeah,
they got to win.
They do. And I've heard people saying, my dad included, and I think you're kind of in this group, that who cares about the Eagles, because if they can't beat the Bears at home anyway, then what's the point of making the playoffs? I do have kind of a sleazy reason for wanting them to win outside of just being a big fan and stuff, and that's wow, excuse me, that it's good for the site, traffic wise, business wise. Obviously it's great for the site, and I do think, just based on, you could look at everything that we said this show about the defense peaking, about Rudolph emerging, about the run game starting, about the defense specifically against the quarterbacks they'd be facing in the playoffs, and say, to quote you, Joe, just get in and, you want to get in and see what happens. And so this game, obviously, is a playoff game.
Yeah.
I do want to touch on it a little bit. We will later in the week as well, but we have about 10 minutes. You seem relatively confident about their chances. It's hard for me because
Go ahead. I was just saying, I'm confident. I'm not afraid of them.
Okay.
That's what I'll say.
I look at games like I'll never forget sitting at I was a sophomore in college. The Vikings had to beat the Cardinals. It was 4th and 26. And I remember going, yes,
No.
the take that I want on our soundbar so bad by Paul Allen. When I think that was when he was relatively new, and that's like when he became the guy. He understood being a Vikings commentator. And I went in the bathroom, I splashed water on my face, and I looked in the mirror, and I just thought, oh my God, like what am I going to do with myself for the next few months? It is amazing that, we had Mike join the show yesterday, and he talked about being 13 in 2009 and becoming a Vikings fan then. It's identical to my story, except for I was 12 in 1998. So I do think that we all have those stories, and so it's hard to overcome 10 when.
Yeah, I was 10 when the Vikings lost their first Super Bowl. So
okay,
I remember it well.
Well, the first one was Kansas City.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, they were favored, right? Pretty well,
Yep.
pretty significantly.
Yeah.
And so it is hard. I do think they should have beat them the first time. I think the pick six was part of it. And so anytime I always have those doubts and fears. But the Bears, I mean, they beat the Rams, but who did they lose to recently that wasn't that great? The Dolphins?
The Bears, they lost to they lost the next week to, it was a pretty decent, it was Philadelphia. Philadelphia beat them.
Oh, okay. They did lose to the Dolphins in overtime. That was earlier in the season, though. They are a beatable team,
Yeah.
and their defense gets a lot of press. I just was watching Sports Center, and they said the guy said there's only 2 elite defenses in the NFL. The Bears and the Ravens, and I wanted to throw my computer at the TV. And I understand that the Vikings started out slow, but I would put them in that category as well. It'll be a defensive grudge match. It got flexed to 3:30, which makes sense. And God, it's going to be huge. And so I just want to, before I kick it to you for your just quick little take on your feeling about it, remind everyone that we will be doing a live chat for the game. And it'll be super fun. So join. Actually, it'll probably be a nightmare, but at least you have people around you that can help you get through some of the moments, and you'll be there in person, right, Joe?
Absolutely. Yep. And I'll have to start copying and pasting some of my reactions, because I'm sure we'll see fire Zimmer, fire Spielman, cut Cousins. So. I was surprised at how fast it came out this week. I'm sorry, we already said that.
I know, but it seems to be every week. It seems to be coming quicker and quicker. Mike said on the show yesterday that the Vikings have been healthy all season. They did have some big injuries earlier in the season. Things could have gone sideways quicker. Cook.
Exactly. That was a huge blow to this team this year, and we're certainly seeing that now. This guy, like you had said a couple weeks ago, the guy's pent up because he had to sit and watch for how many weeks. After sitting and watching last year, the dude wants to contribute.
Yeah.
You can see it by the way he runs. And imagine him. I mean, you can say it to a certain extent, with them out not having a running game without him earlier in the year, that led to D Flip-Out's dependence upon.
Did you come up with that?
Yes, I did. Sorry.
You are so on point with your nicknames this season. It's amazing. I love that. God, that's good.
So, anyways, I think that was a huge injury. But yes, they've been relatively healthy, and they were last year too. That's how they made it so far.
So Cook had 9 attempts for 12 yards. And 3 receptions against the Bears back in middle of November. That's going to be completely different, obviously, and so that very well could end up being the key. The defense did a great job of bottling up Trubisky the first time, and if not for that pick six, things could be completely different. And so,
no, the Bears outplayed the Vikings that game. I don't think you'll see the same game, and Trubisky got out. I mean, they bottled him up with his arm, but I think he got out with his legs a few times and extended some plays and some series. So, you're right. The pick six was huge, and but they as a team, I thought they got outplayed by the Bears. So.
Can I ask you a question that I've always kind of wondered, and you don't hear about as much, which I think answers the question by itself. But, back when the Vikings were playing in the Metrodome, you would hear all the time, every game, especially in games like the Bears game, how loud it was. and it was like Arrowhead or the 12th Man. And the plan I know for TCF was to put like the glass on the ceiling is supposed to reflect sound and amplify it. And I've heard that because the stadium is so big, sound doesn't have a chance to really get together and do that. That the ceiling's too high for the reflective material. And the first season I had my foot and ankle injury and surgery, so I didn't get to go. I've only really been, after going to 6 or 7 of the games at the TCF Bank Stadium in the last season, I've only been to one Vikings game, and I sat in a suite for a preseason game. And so I was wondering if the sound level versus the Metrodome from your perspective.
Mine's a little skewed. I'm up in the press box. I'm on the third row, and there's kind of a lip of a roof that comes over it, so I get shielded away from a little bit. I've walked down a couple rows to the first row of the press box where you are right out in it, and it's crazy loud. There might be something to the fact that it's a little higher, but ultimately the sound has nowhere to go, even though the roof's a little higher. But I look at it this way: if you want to compare it to places like Arrowhead or even the where the 12th Man is out in Seattle in open air stadiums, those are teams that have a championship in their pedigree. Those fans are I swear there's more of an arrogance to their noise. And the Vikings are always, it doesn't take much to get a Vikings crowd worried and chomping on their fingers. I mean, listen to you or me. I've certainly felt that. The Vikings fans are loud as anybody else, and I do think the Metrodome was louder, but I don't know. I'm not able to make the same comparison because I'm not seated in the same place. But it's deafening in there, and I think if you have a team that the Vikings fan base is one that's just waiting for the other shoe to drop as a whole. They're not out there, we've done it, we're going to be arrogant, blah, 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 and scream and yell. But they're going to yell for their team like nobody's business. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that. But I just wonder if there's something underneath it that it doesn't take much for them to be concerned rather than assertively screaming.
I think you nailed it.
I expect it to be loud on Sunday, though, Joe. I really do.
Man, I can't wait, but I also can. I want to savor this week as much as possible. So make sure to enjoy Christmas, and we'll see what happens on Sunday. I want to wish all of our listeners a Merry Christmas. And you as well, Joe, as I said in the beginning of the show, I'm going to try to run out and give you your presents sometime today. And definitely tune into our Q&A after the show. We had 2,000 people view our last one. You can watch it after we're done. They're 10-15 minutes depending on who shows up and whatnot. But they're a good time. And so we're going to hop on and do that in a minute. But definitely keep an eye on Purple PTSD in Vikings territory. Like I said, we hired a bunch of new writers. We're going to hopefully be doing a lot more coverage, which seems impossible because we're so on top of things, myself excluded from that. But it's going to be a great 2019, and we're super excited, and we wouldn't be able to do any of these things if you weren't listening and reading and supporting our stuff. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
The best Christmas gift I could ask for, because it's been a great 2018, but next year is going to be even better. So hop on over, check out our Twitter and Facebook. I have been posting throughout the show links to the Q&A afterwards, so hopefully you can tune in and ask us a few questions. I will post the link to that video in the article for this show, so if you want to watch that and see why I'm single, just go to the article about this show if you're getting an automatic download, and you'll see the video too. But this has been Morning Joe's. We'll catch you on Friday. Skol.